Welcome everyone to the Retro Chat podcast, coming to you from Weymouth. My name's Andy Evans, and this week we are going to be talking all about one of the most legendary UK comedy series. We're going to be talking about that in just a second. How you all been? It's been a couple of weeks. We've not been here. We haven't done a show for a couple of reasons. Touch more on that in just a second. But if you would like to get in contact with us, let us know how you're feeling about the show, what you've enjoyed about it, then you can do by hitting social media. All the details are on screen now if you're watching on YouTube. Or for those listening on podcast, you can go to Facebook at Retro Chat Podcast. Tweet us at RetroChatPod using the hashtag BackInTime. You can send us an email, let us know your thoughts on the show or topics or what we've spoken about or we're going to be talking about in this episode at retrochatpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can visit the website retrochat.co.uk, or you can visit our YouTube channel if you haven't watched this joined already, and click that subscribe button at RetroChat Podcast UK. So we have been away for a couple of weeks. Why is that? Well, you may be seeing it on screen right now. We've got a new look, brand new logo and some new graphics, which are courtesy of my very old, close personal friend Lee Tyers, from who you can hit up on Twitter at SC Asgardian. In fact, Lee is coming up in a moment. We'll be talking about our topic of the week in just a second. Lee has done a marvellous job giving us a whole new look, a whole new image. Got more to come, I'm sure, over the next few weeks. But a big thank you to Lee for making us look a bit more old school and a bit more retro. So what are we going to be talking about this week? Well, today's topic is a good one. It's all about the classic 80s and 90s UK sitcom Only Fools and Horses. We're going to be talking about the show. We're going to be talking about our memories of the show. And then we will be focusing in depth on the two-part Christmas special that aired in 1991 called Miami Twice, or Miami Twice the Movie. It's going to be a good one. I am really looking forward to this, and Lee will be joining me to dissect Only Fools and Horses, so we'll be talking about that in just a second. So without further ado, let's do it. Let's go to the sit down with Lee as we talk about Only Fools and Horses. We'll see you after this.
Hey, this is Olympic gold medalist and TNA World Heavyweight Champion Kurt Angle, and you're listening to The Squared Circle. Oh, it's real. It's damn real, and you better be listening, or I'll break your freaking ankle.
Welcome back to the Retro Chat podcast, and joining me now is my longtime close personal friend. He is the host of one of the hottest new podcasts about to hit the airways, and I can't remember the name, so I'll let him introduce it in just a minute. It is good old LT, Lee Tyers. How you doing? I've never called you that. I'll never call you that again.
Good old LT. I'm not Lawrence Taylor.
I was about to say, I'll never call you that again, mate. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I mean, good old AE. How are you doing? Yeah, there aren't enough hours in the day to do podcasting and record shows and stuff. So, a peek behind the curtain, we're recording this before it gets too hot, because as I'm sure, like, my flat is ridiculously hot at the moment. Your house, I can see the sun beaming through the window. That's ridiculously hot as well. We're getting this done early for you guys. I'm doing really well, enjoying the fruits of redundancy and, taking a couple of months off and working on a couple of other projects, graphic design, audio production, and a new podcast, which is coming pretty soon. So, the BritBucks podcast is going to be your entry to the NFL. If you're a UK fan or any fan who always wanted to get into the NFL, doesn't know a lot about American football, it's going to be me and my girlfriend Becky. She doesn't know a lot about American football, so it's going to be kind of me teaching her some of the rules and regs and all that kind of stuff, along with some of the stuff that I don't know, hoping to get some contributions from other people coming in. And, I'll be learning some stuff as well as we go. So it's all a learning process, a very interactive thing. We've got a website up at britbucks.com. We've got a channel trailer there, and we're hoping to record the first episode later in the week. So if you've got any kind of interest there, I'd appreciate you come check us out. It'd be awesome.
Now you're taking it old school again, aren't you? Because you're not doing the video cast. You're going to go back to the original, the elder statesman way of recording a podcast of audio only.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that's we're kind of similar things. I mean, you and I, Andy, we're both involved in video projects, as in right now, and we do our best. And I think we were sort of dragged kicking and screaming into the video era of sort of online entertainment. But I think, we come from the old podcast and the radio streaming and that sort of stuff. And I think there's an element to that you can't always get on video. Rather than having to sort of sit there and worry about how you look on camera and all that stuff, you can focus on the content. It's also a lot easier, I think you'll agree, to produce when you've just got audio. And I think my kind of thing is that there's so much content out there, especially in this day and age. Who has got a lot of time to sit there in front of a screen or a TV and watch all this content? Something like a podcast you can listen to on a train, you can have it going in the car, you can listen to it with your eyes closed when you're in bed, and you can sort of consume that a different way than you do the video. So I think there are pluses to both, but I haven't done audio only for ages, so we thought we'd give it a go this way.
Now, don't forget, you can listen to us audio only as well on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all of those good stuff. But check out the BritBucks, because we subscribed to it already, the Retro Chat podcast.
Yes. Thank you very much for that.
That's fine. I know nothing about the NFL, so I'm looking forward to checking this out and listening to it. Just going back to the video cast, some people have got faces for video and some people haven't. You're okay. You're fine. I'm better definitely suited to audio only podcasts. I've kind of got that. So the new look will kind of reduce my face on camera. Talking about new look. Oh, thanks. Speaking about new look, we mentioned it before we brought you on. New look, new feel, new logo, designed by this gentleman right here. So a big thank you for the work you've done to rebrand us. It's fantastic. It looks really, really good, mate. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem at all. I mean, we talked about this a little while ago when I was sort of approaching the end of my sort of current job, that I was going into sort of a kind of a graphic design role. And at some point, if I could stick it in the portfolio, I'd look at doing some rebranding for you, and wanted to take it back into kind of like the old school sort of Transformers, old WWF logo, very retro 80s kind of style. And that's kind of what we went with. And and the sort of the layouts that you're putting on it as well, in addition to the logo, is making it, giving it a whole sort of fresh retro vibe. So I think that's it's looking good.
A good partnership. Thank you so much. Right.
No problem at all. You're welcome.
Shall we do it? Shall we start talking about why we are here? And that is because We're celebrating one of the most iconic British comedy series of all time. Originally launching in 1981 on BBC One, it ran until 1991, and then came back for several spin-offs. It is, of course, the old adventures of good old Del Boy, Rodney and Granddad, later replaced by Uncle Albert. It's only Fools and Horses.
Wow. I mean, it's an icon, isn't it, of British TV? And, certainly growing up when we did in the 80s, that was when it had its kind of main run. There's a specific episode we're going to be talking about in a bit as it sort of bled over into the 90s, and it was sort of winding down a little bit. But it was always, really consistent. And I think it worked on multiple levels. You could kind of watch it as a kid. Your parents would let you watch it as a kid because there was nothing in there that was too offensive. But again, when you watch it as an adult, you kind of pick up on some of the threads in there that you wouldn't have as a kid. So it did work on a couple of different levels, and very, very good. Classic.
Some of those double entendres that were coming in, especially with Del Boy doing the French in the wrong place, and you kind of get the symbolic meaning of what he was trying to say. Yep, very, very good. Yeah. Now, it has won numerous awards, including a BAFTA, which is recognition from BAFTA. It's won NTAs. It's been nominated by the Royal Television Society. And in 2004, it was voted Britain's best sitcom. So
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, but I mean, you think about Hello, Some Mothers Do Have Them, Blackadder, The Young Ones, Bottom, My Family, just to name a few. And this is, and by the way, they were all BBC One sitcoms, so that's not I'm not endorsed by BBC, but ITV did do some. So that is, that's a testament really to John Sullivan and the BBC for really kind of putting something out there that didn't really hit the BBC mold. The British Broadcasting Corporation, yes, they do EastEnders, but this was totally different when it first came out in 1981.
Agreed, and the sort of chemistry of the characters really worked as well, and there were some changes in casting and additional characters that came in over the years, And I think they, whether or not they just chucked it at the wall and it just worked, or whether or not there was a lot of studied, measuring of who they put in, but the chemistry between the characters worked. You had a genuine interest, the whole family there, they were the underdogs, and you were just hoping that they were going to get some traction at some point and something was going to work out for them. But you knew if it didn't, there would be comedy consequences. It just worked. It was a formula that worked in every episode. There was always something, and you'd always see the flaw in the plan come in at some point during the episode, usually a few minutes before they did, and you just knew what was coming, and you were just waiting for that moment in every episode. But it just worked. I mean, that's all you can say. It just worked, and I don't think there's been anything really to compare to that since its heyday.
No, I mean, even some of the most iconic moments, you think about when you think of Only Fools and Horses. I don't know about you, but there's two moments that instantly come to mind. One is Del Boy falling through the bar, with that iconic scene where he just leans back, and the second one is the chandelier. When,
yes, of course,
they're trying to take this. They hit the wrong chandelier. That comes down. That's been replicated a few times, but there is one more, and that's the birth of Damien.
Oh yes, yeah.
and the whole 666 and the devil and Rodney's perspective, and all that type of thing. It's just very funny, isn't it? And it's written to a way that I think it appeals to us Brits because it is British sense of humor. It's not American. It's not forced American comedy. You imagine this thing happening in certain homes up and down the country. We've all got a granddad who acts like Leonard Rossiter did. We've all got this, annoying old uncle who, during the war, who kind of sits there and talks about the good old days. And then you've got Rodney, who is the more sensible one. And then you've got the extravagant, elaborate bit of an idiot Del Boy, who's got a heart of gold and wants to do what's best for the family, but doesn't always succeed. It's just, excuse me, it's just amazing. And to see it now lasting, we're in 2022, right? Yeah. Nearly 40, well, just over 40 years. It's been.
Yeah. And that just sort of speaks for the longevity. And you still to this day see Only Fools and Horses t-shirts. You see little models of the three-wheeler van. Some of those other sitcoms that you mentioned, like your Fawlty Towers or Hello, things like that, great in their time, but you don't see anyone really talking about that now. It hasn't got the longevity. You grab a person off the street and ask them if they know who Del Boy is, and they're always going to know that. It just reached that extra level that no other sitcom did. And I think whilst being a really good comedy series, certainly the character of Del Boy, always sort of the comedy guy, something bad happens to him at the end of every episode, but there are always those key moments, maybe every 3 or 4 episodes, where he would get really deep and emotional, and he would something to do with the bond between him and Rodney, or he really went down. It was almost I wouldn't say welcome, but it sort of fit nicely and grounded the episode a little bit. It's not just slapstick comedy the whole way through. There is a very strong family vein going through the episode about the Trotter family, and how, despite all of this stuff they go through, and all the comedy mishaps, they are a very strong family, and they've got a really good bond there. And that I think is very important, and it only makes the comedy, when it does happen, so much more entertaining, because this is a strong bond in the family. And it, despite how much, even if yourself or anyone who's watching it has got a really strong family, stuff hits the fan every so often, and it's sometimes with comedy results, and that's what it's all about.
I mean, you talk about that. I mean, the one moment that I can remember is, I think Cassandra had Rodney, and she unfortunately had a miscarriage, and all the way through the episode you could kind of feel it building. Yeah. And then there was that moment in the lift when you could tell that Del Boy's fixed it, so the lift is busted, and then he just puts his arm around Rodney and says, "Tell me, what's going on, bruv." Yeah. And Rodney breaks down, and I think you've got to give that not only to the writing of John Sullivan, who was so far ahead of his time, and the thing about John is that he said before that he based the characters off people in his own life. So those experiences are things that he's either seen or witnessed or heard, and he's magnified them by 10. but to be able to take a script that is slapstick comedy all the way through, that's got you laughing, crying with laughter just 30 seconds before, to just flipping that switch and taking you down that deep emotive route, because you've got this genuine affection for the characters as well, because you've grown up with them. We've grown up with them from when they were kids. To the minute that's pulling over just a little bit too long, you get "shut up, you plonker."
Exactly. Yeah.
And it brings it straight back. It's just beautiful writing, and why he was such a master of his game in terms of doing this.
Yeah, 100%. It takes you on a roller coaster and speeds up and slows down just at the right points. As I say, when it does get a bit too slapstick, there's always a grounding moment. When you feel a bit, this is getting a bit deep and serious, there will be a one-liner in there to sort of break the tension a little bit. And it's, perfectly done.
I think also we got to look at some of the guest stars that really kind of launched their career. Oh, hello. I've just had a neighbour's cat walk in the office. That's weird. That doesn't happen very often. This is live recording, peeps. Hi, Pip. God. Some of the guests as well that have really kind of had their careers launched, and the one I'm talking about is Jim Broadbent.
Oh yes, yeah, of course.
Who came in as DCI Roy Slater in a couple of the early episodes.
Yeah, it wasn't even the sort of later ones, was it?
I think it was season 2, season 3, because Granddad was still in these episodes. And now you think of Jim Broadbent, he's all over the place. One of the biggest film stars we've got in the UK. He's been in practically everything. But also Nicholas Linhurst as Rodney. I mean, he kind of found fame in Butterflies, at Carla Lane, sitcom, but it was really this that elevated him to that next level. And it was after this that he did the Piglet Files, which I don't know if you remember on ITV, which was like the MI5 spoof.
I don't remember that. I remember Goodnight Sweetheart, which I was quite fond of. That was really good. But again, a platform to some of these. And again, we'll talk about David Jason and some of the things that he moved on to do. But I think, selfishly, none of those were anywhere near the sort of recognition and the fame of Only Fools and Horses. And maybe to the actor's detriment a little bit, they will always be linked to the to those characters, kind of like a Harrison Ford is always going to be Indiana Jones and Han Solo, even if you put him in something else, that's Indiana Jones. Some of those iconic roles that some of those actors have, maybe it did hit them a little bit worse on their career for that point. But again, what better character to be linked to, really? It's not like it's an embarrassing thing. It is, and David Jason, of course, classically trained actor. It took me years before I realized that the voice he did for Del Boy was not his voice. He's very well spoken, and the Cockney London accent was put on the whole time, and it just sounded so natural.
It took me years to realize that Del Boy was Danger Mouse.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, very good. Danger Mouse was awesome.
That's another episode we've got to do at some point. But I mean, you're absolutely right. And David Jason, Only Fools and Horses, Darling Buds of May as Pa Larkin, a totally kind of, I imagine, a hybrid character really between Del Boy and David Jason. It was that family man, but kind of slightly different. Of course, Bradley Walsh now plays Pa Larkin in Darling Buds of May. Jack Frost in A Touch of Frost. I mean, how different can you go from a straight comedy actor from Open All Hours? That's where he got his launch. This was given to him because of that. To Only Fools and Horses, to the dramedy of Darling Buds of May, to that really straight detective, quite chilling, hardcore drama of Touch of Frost.
Touch of Frost, fantastic. In fact, Becky's just sent me a message. She's listening to the live podcast recording at the moment, and she's messaged me and said, Touch of Frost. And again, completely different character. All four of those, Granville, Del Boy, Pa Larkin, and, Detective Frost as well. You couldn't have more different characters, could you? And even the acting, the accents and things that he had to portray. Open All Hours, he was sort of a northern accent. The Cockney accent in Only Fools and Horses. Moving on to Darling Buds of May, had to have a bit of a country accent there, and then very straight laced in Touch of Frost. Really great actor, and brilliant.
tremendous. And then, of course, the ensemble cast. And there's one person I really want to touch on, and that's Boise, John Challis, who passed away about 18 months ago now, 18 months, 2 years. Was there a rival? Was there a better character to be a rival for Del Boy than Boise? You know,
well, I think he needed to be there because his character is everything Del Boy wanted to be. You know, he had the money, he had the girl on his side with the fur coats, and that was everything Del aspired to be. But you know, I don't think we ever really find out, you know, quite how Boise got all of his money, and you know, he does some dodgy dealings, but you know, none of those plans ever worked out for Del until sort of later seasons, as we would find out. But yeah, that character was always there to sort of say, you know, what does success look like to Del? You know, if he makes 500 quid down the market, is that, you know, can he put his feet up? No, this is what he wants to be like. This is the life he wants to have. So it gives you a clear vision of what Del wants. And, you know, there are other people like your Mickey Pierce and all of that. You know, this is what Del's going to end up turning into if he doesn't, you know, he's not successful. And you've got those two polar opposites, but they're all mixing. They're all a little group of sort of friends down at the pub. They all talk to each other all the time. And yeah, sort of Del's somewhere in the middle. And
then you got Trigger as well. Can't forget Trigger.
Yeah. Again, how many classic lines from Trigger?
Oh, Dave. It's such a shame that some of them are no longer here now. You know, I can't remember the actor's name who played Trigger, but obviously he's no longer with us. John Challis, as we said, is no longer with us. It's Roger Lloyd Pack.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
It's such a shame because they were iconic characters.
Yeah.
You know, even the Nag's Head, when you talk about, and that's had a lot of different incarnations over the years. So I remember watching an episode, one of the earlier episodes back in 81, 82, where D.I. Viv Martella from The Bill suddenly turned up, right? And it was only about a year later you watch The Bill, and there she is, and you're like, oh, you were on, hang on. And then it's a bit like Casualty, isn't it? It was a launching point, like we said, for some of them.
Exactly. Yeah, just small roles. You may be in there for an episode or two, or in the background, or come in as one of Del's friends and have a couple of lines in the pub, or what have you. Roger Lloyd Pack, I remember having that moment, you know, in it was the third Harry Potter film. Fourth Harry Potter film when Roger Lloyd Pack turns up. Hang on a minute, that's you know, that's Trigger. What's he doing there? And again, very difficult to take seriously until you let his acting kind of take control. You know, you just picture him if you haven't seen him in anything else, just as the character of Trigger. So they, you know, I think a lot of them have gone on to other things, but again, it's that iconic Only Fools ensemble cast.
It's like that scene from Heroes and Villains where they're sat in the cafe having the fry-up, and Trigger is saying to him, well, I've just been nominated for an award. I've got this award, and it's because I've got the original broom that I had back in 1970 when I first started. How can it be the original broom trick? Well, it's only had 7 new heads, 6 new handles, but it's just a way, and it brings a smile to your face, doesn't it? Even when you're badly reciting what those scenes were, it just, the memory of it. And that's the biggest takeaway for Only Fools and Horses, is the memory, and you can really kind of buy into it. And even now, you can, if you're feeling a bit low, or things are going wrong in the world or whatever, and you think about Ukraine, you think about the cost of living crisis, you think about this, pop an episode on Gold and watch it, and you instantly just cheered up, aren't you? It's
totally. Another one of those trigger lines I need to get in there is it's an episode where I think they're trying to come up with a new sort of a member, or like a chairman for a local community board or committee or something, chairman of the committee. And Rodney goes down to the sort of church hall and part of this meeting where they're going to, you know, all these people start resigning. And it's sort of left with Rodney and Trigger sat there, and you all right, Dave? And Rodney finally, after all these years, turns around and goes, Trigger, why do you call me Dave? So that's your name, isn't it? No, my name's not Dave. My name's Rodney. Oh, I thought it was Dave. Never mind. You live and learn. And then how long is this going to take? Because me and Dave want to get out of here. And it, you know, just that kind of, the play on words and that sort of stuff. So simple, but so effective.
Yeah. And again, we're talking about it 40 years later.
Yeah. Yeah. Can't go wrong.
Either that shows how old we are,
or bit of both.
Bit of both. But oh man, it's amazing. Before we start talking about Miami Twice, I just want to touch on They Do It. time on our hands. That last three-parter that they did before they came back, which really were the episodes where they should never have come back. But the three-parter where Del Boy is on, no, it's not on the game show, is he? They find the clock, they find the watch, the pocket watch in the garage.
Yeah.
Goes to Sotheby's. They become millionaires, which is what Del Boy wanted. Was that the perfect way to wrap up Only Fools and Horses?
I've thought about this several times over the years. In one way, yes, because it kind of ties up the knot of, they've worked all these years, they've done this, that, and the other, but eventually they got what they wanted, close the curtains, they live happily ever after. But then you also, I suppose, a couple of elements to it. Number one, you want to see how they live with all that money, if the living is, that the money has changed them, or how they're sort of going about things. But in addition to that, I guess it's, the humor was always because they didn't have any money and because they were always trying to make money. That's where a lot of the comedy came from. So I can kind of see both sides of that. So not wanting to commit to either. I get why they brought it back, and I get why they went sort of a bit more old school with it. But argument kind of works both ways with that. I can see why they did it, but I wouldn't have had an issue if they had just stuck to it with the them getting that money at the end.
I think the problem with bringing it back was the fact that it was written by somebody other than John Sullivan, and it wasn't even written by his son. It was written by a guy called Gareth Gwendolyn. But it was released over 3 years. So it was on Christmas. You had the first episode, Christmas Day 2001, which is when they lost the money. Then you had Strangers on the Shore, which was December of 2002, Christmas Day, where they saw all the Uncle Albert clones. That island where obviously he crashed, in a nice little nod back to Buster Merryfield. And then you had Sleepless in Peckham, which was the 25th of December 2003. And what you could see was the audience figures were gradually going down. So in 2001, it peaked at 21.3 million viewers.
Wow. Yeah.
That's huge for prime time on Christmas Day. In 2002, it went down to 16.3, and in 2003, it went to 16.37. So a bit of a difference between those viewing figures, but nothing compared to what it had in its heyday of 24.3. We're going to go to a quick break, Lee. When we come back, we'll touch more on Miami Twice.
Hey, this is Olympic gold medalist and TNA World Heavyweight Champion Kurt Angle, and you're listening to The Squared Circle. Oh, it's real. It's damn real, and you better be listening, or I'll break your freaking ankle.
Welcome back to the Retro Chat podcast. Andy and Lee here talking all about Only Fools and Horses. A bit of an abrupt end to the first half of the show. Damn Zoom for running out of time. That's what you get for trying to do things in the cheap.
But as you were talking about cost of living, you've got to make cutbacks, and that's one of the things. But at least you get a nice toilet break halfway through, so you can go and refresh yourselves and then come back.
Exactly, and the cat came back in, so I had to zoom it off while you were trying to reconnect to the call.
There we go.
All happy days. Right, let's talk about that particular episode, and it aired Christmas of 1991. All right, it was the first time that they'd really had done a two-parter that kind of went across the Atlantic. Part one of Only Fools and Horses was Miami Twice, to be the American Dream. Aired on Christmas Eve of 1991, peaking with 17.7 million viewers.
Wow. Huge. I mean, you're always going to get that Only Fools and Horses at Christmas, I guess, is kind of, or what always was the sort of the staple, wasn't it? A new episode. It's kind of the equivalent of a Gavin and Stacey now. Everyone stops what they're doing and tunes into something like that on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So, good figures.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you remember about this first part of the episode? Because for me, I can remember Del Boy being, the sneaky Del Boy trying to get his own way, showing a bit of concern for Rodney and Cassandra, playing Rodney against Cassandra, playing them against each other, and then bagging himself tickets to Miami.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of the sort of the first part certainly is, kind of your classic Only Fools and Horses episode, a little bit of wheeling dealing going on. You're in the middle of Rodney and Cassandra sort of being on the outs in their marriage, and you've got kind of that underlying tone. Starts off with the christening of Damien, and of course the whole Rodney and Damien kind of chemistry there, and with Rodney being absolutely petrified of him. And yeah, it starts off really with the seed being planted, as we said earlier. With Boise talking about him and Marlene going off doing an American tour, and they'll head down to Miami at some point, and that kind of plants the seeds in Dell's head, and he very cleverly makes it seem like it's Rodney that's come up with the idea to go to Miami, and then Dell sorts it all out. Just as a nice thing for his brother, gets it all sorted, and then tries to worm his way in, and as he always does, and ends up going on the trip with him.
Which I didn't realize he stole his pension money.
Yes,
I didn't realize that. I've never realized that.
How bad is that?
Well, but the beginning of the episode, obviously you talk about Boise. There's that moment where it's Damien's christening, and again, see Rodney holding him, and the Exorcist music playing and all this type of thing. But then afterwards, Dell's talking to the vicar about buying self-blessed, pre-blessed wine.
Yes.
And a whole truck of this thing arrives in one of the episodes down the line.
Yeah. So I mean, the premise is Dell walks into speaks to the vicar after the service. I've got a great business idea for you. How long does it take you to bless the wine? Oh, 2 or 3 minutes. Like, well, what if you did it en masse? What if I could give you a big load of it en masse and you did it all in one go? How much time is that going to save you? And really trying to sell it to him. It's only a bit later on, I think actually halfway through the second episode, which was obviously 99.9% filmed in the States. A little bit jarring. You immediately are back in Peckham, and you learn that the wine isn't your red wine, blood of Christ. It's actually a load of white wine that Dell had sat around and had bought and was stuck with. He was trying to ship off. So again, that's another underlying thread in the episode, which is great.
It was a really nice Romanian Riesling.
Yes.
Some of these things you just remember, isn't it? Yeah. So then, they're now in the States. So Dell and Rodney are flying out. You have that great montage scene where at the airport, and they have the beer and the cocktail with the elaborate, straws and stuff. And they land in Miami. You've been to Florida a few times, so
yeah,
you know what it's like to drive over in America. It's a little bit nuts.
Yeah.
They get the camper van. And then instantly Dell's driving on the wrong side of the road, and you see all the cars kind of swerving past, and Dell, and again, it's British humor, isn't it? It's what we would all do. We would all, why are you driving on the wrong side of the road? We drive on the right side of the road. Why? And all the Americans thinking he's Australian. Yeah,
but the Cockney accent is and that's kind of a thread that runs all the way through this episode as well. And the Cockney accent, everyone in the States interprets as Australian. Brilliant.
So they get over there. They then go into the nightclub. They have the drinks. They get their money stolen. They get their suitcase stolen, their bag stolen, the camper van stolen, all because, for the sake of a two-part episode, Del Boy is the body double of a mafia boss.
Yeah, so I mean, I think early on in that episode, the mafia boss is, he's about to get busted and sent to jail for probably a life sentence for all sorts of dodgy dealings. So they come up with an idea. Okay, if we can find someone to be almost a body double, we'll act as though they've been assassinated, and then you're home free. No one's going to be looking for you at that point. They stumble across Dell, obviously a carbon copy of this mob boss, and think, okay, well, we'll make friends with him. Get him in good favor, get him in the right place, shoot him, make sure everyone sees it, and we're sorted. And that's kind of the premise of the episode. And the best thing is Dell, kind of not realizing that this is going on, and just enjoying the hospitality, and narrowly avoiding the death attempts during the episode, whether it's being shot or sent to sea on a jet ski, which again, another iconic Only Fools and Horses moment. And it's a lot later in the episode where they finally twig what's actually going on.
Again, we talk about the versatility of David Jason being able to go scene to scene. 1 minute is Del Boy, 1 minute as this Italian mafia boss, with even the different facial reactions. The Bond villain, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, just imagine him in the white suit, turning around on the chair, stroking the white cat. And 00 Piglet walking in, going, you know, you could just imagine it. But this first episode, this first part was really setting the scene, wasn't it, for what we were about to get coming up in a 95-minute special, which was supposed to be in England, Christmas Day of 1991. Viewership had gone down quite a lot. It dropped from 17.7 to 14.9 million, which was surprising because it was lower than the three specials that we talked about before the break. Was it too long, this one? Because in total, you know, it was a feature-length movie of Fools and Horses.
I'm not sure necessarily if it was to do with the length, but I think it was because it was all shot in the States. You were still kind of, you know, the hook behind an Only Fools and Horses episode is, you know, them stuck in Peckham and then them doing some sort of dodgy deal. And whilst this is a great standalone episode and felt really fresh and different with the characters we already know, I think for your staunch Only Fools and Horses fans, this was just a little bit too much of a departure from what you normally watch on TV. It was almost you knew what was going to happen almost from sort of 10 minutes in. You knew how it was all going to play out, and but I think it was a little bit too. I think sometimes the American cast, I think, felt a little bit awkward because, you know, Americans aren't going to have a clue what Only Fools and Horses is. I think sometimes the American cast were struggling a little bit, sort of knowing what they're supposed to be doing, how they're supposed to interact with these guys. Why is this funny? You can feel that in some places. Now, I think it worked, but not necessarily the same way as people expected from a normal episode.
Well, yeah, because, you know, you only have to look a year later when they did Mother Nature's Son, again on Christmas Day in 92. That peaked at 20.1, but that was based back in Peckham, you know, so that was, you know, that was a different show, wasn't it? Let's carry on with the second part. So we've now met Don Dell. We've met Dell. They're now staying in the same property, but they're not able to ring home. They can't call Raquel. Raquel's not heard anything, or Cassandra's not heard anything from Del Boy and Rodney. Rodney's beginning to feel this is all a bit strange.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, Del doesn't realize this at all. He just, we've just met some nice people. They're looking after us. Well, you know, great hospitality this is. Rodney being a bit more switched on. Of course, as you said, they've disabled the phones because they don't want anyone being able to reach them. Because, of course, if they're going to be at the center of this plot and going to get killed, they don't want anyone knowing where they are. And yeah, about 2/3 of the way through the episode, they start, probably about 3/4 of the way through the episode actually is when they sort of start to realize something's wrong. Rodney rumbles it and they accidentally stumble across this body double of Del Boy, and you know, Nicholas Lyndhurst ends up choking him and not realizing he's this massive mob boss, thinking it's Del. Very, very when you see the realization creep into his head, that's another great moment. Yeah,
that's because he's realized that he's been swindled because of the pension money and getting the holiday. That brings us on to one of the most funniest moments or sequences in the episode, because they're trying to escape. And now in the Everglades. You know, about to be eaten by alligators, and all of a sudden, who appears but Marlene, Boise, and baby Tyler? I mean, what are the chances of that happening?
Yeah, they're on the Miami leg of their sort of multi-city tour of the US, right? At the same time, and the little boy Tyler said, "Oh, look, there's Uncle Rodney. Oh, isn't that nice?" He thinks he sees Rodney in the woods there, and it turns out it actually is Rodney. And they end up saving the day.
You don't expect Boise to be saving the day, do you?
No, exactly. And again, maybe you'd sort of be, if it was any other episode, you'd almost expect Boise to be like, no, leave him alone, pretend we haven't seen him, let's just go. I think, you know, the part that you've got here is, you know, John Sullivan did write both episodes, but different directors on each one. I wonder if the chemistry wasn't quite there, and maybe a couple of the characters maybe used a little bit. I wouldn't have seen Boise doing that. It was a nice way to end it off and sort of link it back to the sort of Peckham cast. But it wasn't really in keeping with Boise, I guess, or I don't know. Something felt a little bit off with that.
You kind of wanted Boise, when they got back to Peckham, to kind of say, well, look, I saved your ass, you owe me. Right?
Yeah.
You're going to do this for me, you're going to do that. But you're right, there wasn't that. And it was just a bit of a, so like most action films or you know, these type of specials, they build it up and then they wrap it up really quick, and it seemed like a really quick wrap up for that
Yes,
whole
it did.
story, because then it was the Bay of Biscay. They got them set up. The FBI came in. They did the drop, got them Vincenzo Olchetti, got taken, and that was it. It was all over. The big laugh was when they got back to Peckham, because what's waiting outside Nelson Mandela House but dozens of crates of wine deemed unfit for Holy Communion, taking it right back to that opening scene in The American Dream. And again, beautifully written, isn't it, by John Sullivan, to wrap it up. The beginning of the first episode is the last scene of that last episode.
Yeah, the very last shot that you get is Del and Rodney at the door of the flat. You know, the door comes open and Raquel's there, and you can see in their eyes they're expecting a big welcome. Where have you been? We're so worried, all that sort of stuff. And all you get to see is all these boxes of wine stacked up anywhere, and the vicar just sort of stood there waiting to have a word. Yeah, absolutely perfect. Yeah, great ending, and ties it up very nicely.
So where would you rate it then in all of the specials? I mean, when you consider the Jolly Boys outing, the Frog's Legacy, Mother Nature's Son, Fatal Extraction. I love that name. All of the Christmas specials they did. Where would you rate it?
It's up there, certainly. I mean, I think I won't say it's one of the best episodes, but it's certainly one of the more memorable and one of my favorites, I would say. I remember, having this on VHS. I recorded it off the TV, Christmas 91. I was, heading to Florida right after I finished my GCSEs in 1992. And I remember, watching this thinking, oh, look, they're in Florida, watching that intro of part 2 with them, the music playing and them looking all around Florida and that sort of stuff, and getting excited about my own holiday. So, I watched this one so many times. So it's certainly one of my favorites. I'm not sure if it's going to be one of the best received or, best quality episodes out there, certainly for the hardcore fans. But, I liked it. I enjoyed it. It's right up there.
Yeah, there is something about it that will always be that. I mean, I got the VHS. I went and bought the VHS, and they just merged it into one big movie. Yeah, so I was just literally watching it in its entirety. And you can still sit there to this day and pop. Well, you can't because I haven't got a VHS player anymore. Betamax now, archaic. But you could shove the VHS in and just watch it. And if they air it on gold in that one big hit, because normally they air part 1, part 2 straight after each other, there is nothing better than sitting down and just watching it in its entirety, one hit, and I don't know about what you're like with your son, but I'm looking forward to my daughter's a bit older, sitting her down and watching a bit of Only Fools and Horses. She won't understand it. She won't like it. She'll tell me I'm old, but I remember doing it with my dad. That was part of the course.
And to take this back round to sort of where we started, it is one of those series that you can sit down there and watch. One of those 80s, series that you can sit down and watch with a kid. And there's nothing offensive apart from calling someone a dipstick or a plonker or something like that. You can't sit down and watch, Alf Garnett or anything like that, because that's way past the line in this day and age. But, something like Only Fools and Horses, it's harmless fun. And, you stick on ITV at 7 o'clock in the evening, you get worse things said. So it's all harmless fun, and it's good to rewatch.
I think Alf Garnett was a bit over the line back when it first aired, let alone
definitely some things you see on that now, crikey, wow.
No, I mean, that will be an episode we do in the future. We'll be looking at In Sickness and in Health, and that's the other thing. Just want to pick up on that, the theme song, just going back to the theme song performed by Chaz and Dave, who also did In Sickness and in Health. Yeah. The iconic song, isn't it? No income tax, no VAT, no money back, no guarantee. It's just, you get it stuck in your head, and then it just plays.
And again, the pop culture relevancy of it, there's a musical now of Only Fools and Horses. That's what other British comedy TV show has had it turned into a musical. I can't think of any. You've got, it's up there with the likes of Back to the Future that's now got a musical, going, as Andy. It's got to put that sort of relevance and emphasis on something like Only Fools and Horses and be confident that they can make a decent amount of money out of something. They've got to put their money behind a decent bet, and that's what it is. And I think now maybe is the time where people like you and I who were around in the 80s, the whole premise of the Retro Chat podcast, looking at that stuff we used to watch as kids and in the 80s, that's what they're pulling on here. Stranger Things works so well because everyone remembers what it was like in the 80s. And, that's what it is. You want to remember being sat there as a kid or a teenager watching these programs, and go and watch it on stage, and you'll feel like watching Only Fools and Horses episode, brand new material essentially, and you'll feel like you sat there as a kid watching TV.
The casting for that musical, have you seen any of the previews of it? I mean, it's been out for a couple of years now, but have you ever seen any of the live?
I did see it. Were they on something like, was it on Britain's Got Talent or Strictly or something like that? They did a little preview with Paul Whitehouse there, or Ant and Dec or something like that. They were on some kind of Saturday night TV. And Paul Whitehouse, they showed a little bit of a preview of one of the scenes. And it looks absolutely perfect.
Well, Paul Whitehouse plays Granddad and Uncle Albert.
Crazy.
And so they do, the bit, and then he suddenly becomes Uncle Albert. But the guy they got to play Del Boy has got David Jason down to a T. I mean, he's got the verbiage, he's got the tone, he's got the pronunciation, he's got the cocky swagger with the, with the hand gestures and all that type of thing. It is like watching David Jason on the West End. So if you haven't seen it yet, go and see it. I think maybe we need to organise a trip.
That would work.
Happy with that. Have a few beers and watch a bit of Only Fools and Horses and come back.
Sounds good. That'll be a good episode.
Amazing. Mate, thank you so much for joining us for Retro Chat this week.
No problem. Always love it.
Give a shout out because you're busy. Tell us a bit more about the podcast. Last plug for the two podcasts.
For the two podcasts. So you can head on over. So I do two podcasts or two shows. One is about Pool Speedway, sort of more of a locally themed podcast about the Pool Pirate Speedway team. We're live every few weeks over at piratecast.live. That will take you to the YouTube channel. Any likes or subscribes over there would be fantastic. All of our content is over there. And just about to launch is the BritBucks podcast, strictly a podcast on its own, audio only. And that'll be, you find everything, FAQs about us, all that kind of stuff over at britbucks.com, BRITBUCS.com. Head over there, and we've got a Discord that we're opening now as well, so you can head on in there and have a bit of a chat. Again, it's a bit quiet there because we haven't launched our first episode. We haven't really promoted anything as yet, but within the next few days we'll be recording, and that first episode will be out there, and we'll start to build a bit of a community. It'll be good. Send
us the link for the Discord and we'll join that as well.
Absolutely.
I love the tagline though. It's just a podcast.
Yeah. Well, again, it's easy, it's simple. With the technology, we've essentially got two little television studios here that we're talking from. But again, the technology that used to be a real struggle for us back in the day, trying to get everything working, it's a lot easier now. You can just click a button and away you go and record. And, it's nice and easy for us. I mean, I'm going to be sitting there talking to Becky about American football and what she needs to know, why this person's done that, what this is for, why did he say that, and what does it mean? We'll be having that conversation anyway, so why not stick it down and record it and make a podcast out of it.
So you're going to do kind of like watch-alongs as well? So you're going to cover the live games when the Tampa Bay Bucks are playing?
Potentially. We're purposely starting it off small, just with the podcast, audio only. But we'll see what the reception's like, see what people want from it. We might do some sort of live call-ins so people can talk to us and maybe teach us a few things, and maybe do some watch-alongs, doing some alternate commentaries on games and things like that. There's a world open to us. We're not saying definitely yes for anything at the moment. We are just keeping it strictly as a podcast to start off with, and we'll see where it takes us.
Fantastic. Can't wait. So that's the BritBucks podcast coming later this week as we're recording this now. It might already be out by the time we release the show.
It might be.
We'll put a link to your website and to your Spotify page on in all of the comments here on YouTube and on the audio feed. So
amazing. Much appreciated.
No, not a problem at all. Lee, always a pleasure, my friend, to have you on.
Absolutely. Love it.
Goonies next time?
Oh, yes. Wow. I mean, that's, absolutely. You're not doing a Goonies show without me being there.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. Goonies show. So
yes, I'm more than happy with that.
Brilliant. All right, stay with me for just a second. We're going to go to a last break. When we come back, a bit of Retro Chat news. Not about the show, just in general news, entertainment things, maybe. Don't know. We'll see when we come back. We'll be back after this.
If I've said it once, I've said it a million times. Everybody's got a price for the $1 Million Man, and everything's got a price tag on it. And this show, The Squared Circle, has been bought by the $1 Million Man.
Some might cost a lot.
All right, my thanks there to Lee for joining me, talking all about Only Fools and Horses. I'm sure you'll agree, it was such an amazing show. One of the greats that was ever released here in the UK, and I'm looking forward to covering some of the other UK classics, such as Blackadder, such as Allo Allo, such as Bottom, such as The Young Ones, that we talked about at the beginning of that interview. And don't forget what Lee mentioned in his section there. If you're a fan of the NFL, if you're a fan of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or you've just got a passing interest in the NFL and you want to know more, check out the BritBucks podcast, available by the time you hear this. I'm sure all over the place, on podcasts, on YouTube, on Spotify. We'll be putting links in all of our narratives, so you can check that out. It's going to be a great show. I'm really looking forward to listening to it. Right, let's get some news ready to go. So we're going to go to the newsline. So we're going to kick off news this week looking at the new Indiana Jones film. And the writer of Indiana Jones 4 admits that aliens, as we all know, were a mistake. The screenwriter for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, David Coep, recently admitted that 2008 sequel's Aliens might have actually been an error. He opened up about the controversial decision to include interdimensional beings resembling extraterrestrials in the fourth Indiana movie in an episode of the Script Apart podcast. He said, and we quote, "I was never happy with the idea. When I came on, I tried to convince Steven Spielberg and George Lucas to change it. I had this other idea, but they didn't want to change it. I'm not saying mine would have been better, but I think that a lot of the pushback the movie got in a larger sense, aside from the little things that people might not have liked that were too silly or whatever, the larger one was that we don't feel like aliens should have been in an Indiana Jones movie. And actually, fair enough, in retrospect, you're probably right." Now, he declined to say in this interview what his alternative idea for the fourth Indy film would have been, joking that he'd prefer it to remain this mystery that's probably brilliant, but in fans' collective imaginations. Now, as we know, a fifth Indiana Jones film is currently in production, with Jez Betterworth, John Henry Butterworth, and James Mangold taking over the script writing duties. Harrison Ford unveiled the first look at the Star Wars Celebration event in May 2022, which depicted the aged adventurer in a silhouette as he navigates a dark cavern. Ford also announced the film will be released in June of 2023, so not long to go now. Neither Disney nor Lucas have yet confirmed the official title for Indiana Jones 5, although a photo of a branded baseball cap belonging to producer Frank Marshall has fueled speculation the film is called Indy. If this is true, it would mark a significant break from the wordier Saturday matinee inspired naming convention established by the previous entries in the franchise. Indiana Jones, one of my personal all-time favourites. I've loved pretty much every indie film that they've done, with the exception of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Was that because of aliens? I don't know. I think it was a combination of aliens and Shia LaBeouf. Yeah, less said about Shia LaBeouf, the better. Now we're going to continue with the movie franchise because we're going to be talking about Jurassic World. And Jurassic World Dominion hits on demand this week, and we are recording this on the 12th of July. Universal Studios announced that Dominion is all set to stomp out of theatres and into homes in the US later this week. On social media, the studio announced the conclusion to Colin Trevorrow's Jurassic World trilogy will be available on demand on Friday, July the 15th. Dominion has performed well at the box office since its release, with current data showing a worldwide gross earning of $876 million. It should be noted, however, that Universal Pictures' summer blockbuster is one of a handful of films to get a release in Chinese theatres, where it performed better than most other Hollywood films have in the last year. Critically, however, the film failed to impress critics, with many calling it the weakest chapter in the trilogy, saying poor performances, a lackluster story and a longer runtime was part of the reason. Directed by Trevorrow and written by Trevorrow and Emily Carmichael, Dominion is set in the aftermath of Fallen Kingdom. It sees the return of the iconic trio from the original Jurassic Park, Sam Neill, Jeff Goldblum and Laura Dern, reprising their roles as Alan Grant, Ian Malcolm and Ellie Sattler. They join the standard Jurassic World heroes Owen Grady and Claire Dearing, played by Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard. So there were many challenges behind the scenes, not at least of which was COVID-19, which was at its peak when filming began. On top of that, the project itself was ambitious, as Trevorrow insisted on returning to practical effects wherever possible. He wanted to do that rather than employing CGI as he did for previous installments. Because of that, some of the dinos, such as the Pyroraptor, according Trevorrow, proved to be troublesome and required a lot of time to construct. With the exception of Jeff Goldblum, who had briefly appeared in Fallen Kingdom, the cast of Jurassic Park did take some convincing to return. So, Jurassic Park Fallen Kingdom in the US will be released on streaming services by the end of this week. Once we get to see it, we'll give you a full recap of Jurassic World Dominion. In fact, we're going to be doing an episode in the coming weeks on the legacy of Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, which I'm personally, I can tell I've not done this for a couple of weeks, I'm personally really looking forward to doing. Now, our last bit of news is actually in the realm of gaming, and it concerns Red Dead Redemption, because according to industry insiders, Rockstar have shelved the next-gen and enhanced versions of Red Dead Redemption 2. As reported by VGC, a Rockstar insider provided reliable leaks that revealed that the updated editions for the PS5 and the Xbox Series XS were in the works but have since been shelved. This is same for an enhanced edition, although it isn't clear what version would have included, and it comes days after Rockstar announced its intention to abandon Red Dead Online, which was the multiplayer format, to focus energies on Grand Theft Auto 6. So is this the end of the Red Dead love affair? You know, personally, I loved Red Dead Redemption. I preferred Red Dead 2. I thought the gameplay was much better. Obviously, the graphics were vastly improved, but there was something about the game that took it back to the old style gaming roots, and it was just a challenge and just a lovely way to visit other areas. So I'm really disappointed about that, but at the same point, you know, I've got my copy on PS4 Pro, so I'm happy about that. That's it for this week's edition of the Retro Chat podcast. Again, my big thanks to Lee for joining me earlier on to talk about Only Fools and Horses. Next week, though, we have got a treat, because we're going to be breaking down the first movie that we've done here on Retro Chat. And what a best way of doing that than by looking at the 1989 Batman film that starred Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson along with Kim Basinger. So, Batman 1989 is what we'll be looking at next week. As well as that, we're also going to be doing some squared circles. There's a couple of things in the pipeline, and I want to hear from you. What did you think of the Batman film? What do you think of Only Fools and Horses? You can let us know on social media. Facebook at Retro Chat Podcast, tweet us at Retro Chat Pod using the hashtag down the bottom of Back in Time, or email me retrochatpodcast@gmail.com. or use the comment function here on YouTube. Just like the video and leave us a comment. It helps us to break the YouTube algorithm and become more popular. Well, that's it for me. Thank you for joining us for the return of the Retro Chat podcast. I promise you it won't be 2 weeks next time. We will be back next week. And again, massive thanks to Lee for the revised look, the rebranding, the re-graphics. I think it looks fantastic. I hope you do too. That's it for me. I will see you next week. Until then, take care for now. Bye-bye.